working on being done for a while. So we're at the braining process. The hide is on a little bit of a hill with the head down. We definitely want all the brain solution that doesn't soak in to drip down to the head, because the thickest part of the hide is the hump and the head. So he's downhill, and we've got our bottle inside to keep the shape of the head while he's tanning. Now we're about ready to put our brain solution on. Now this is something I definitely recommend you research and do some homework on your own about the types of brains that you use. CWD, chronic wasting disease, is very common in this part of the world, in the eastern panhandle of West Virginia. So for safety reasons, I don't use fresh brains from wild animals, especially deer brains. I buy commercially produced pig brains, food-grade pig brains. It's real tricky. Some places they're very, very hard to find. Anything brains in the spinal cord to buy them legally. So kind of your call what you do. For myself, or then for teaching classes, hide tanning classes, buckskin or hair on, I would rather use brains that I know are relatively safe. And I always cook the brains. I always boil the brains, typically over an open fire until all the pink is gone and everything is a really, really creamy marshmallow white, to ensure that the potential for pathogens and bacteria is as little as possible for myself, and then for people that come here as students. So we have a pot. We don't do pasta or anything at this pot anymore. This is nothing but a brain pot. And this is what the brain solution is going to look like, and this is nothing but brains. If I needed more brains and didn't have them, I could use eggs. If I needed another solution for more mass, if I had a very, very large hide, or for whatever reason I didn't have brains, I could substitute egg yolks with that. Now this is still relatively hot. Relatively hot. I'm not going to use gloves for this because I typically don't. Some of that is because I do cook the poop out of the brains. It's up to you whether you use gloves or not. Now, I do recommend also that you free your schedule up for the next half an hour or so. Cell phones, watches, rings, anything from your elbows down that could come in contact with brains, try to remove them from the equation. Doorknobs, anything, don't touch anything, because there's going to be a residual brains left on there, and that could potentially create a lot of really, really nasty bacteria for you. It can be actually very dangerous. So pull my sleeves up, everything off of my wrists. I'm going to wash my hands really good when I'm done with this as well. So I'm going to start putting the brain solution on. I'm going to start in the middle of the hide, in the midline of the hide, and work out, because I don't want to get brains all over my knees as well. Now this, again, is not optimum today. What I would like, ultimately, in a perfect world, is for this hide to be almost dry to the touch. Almost dry to the touch. And when I'm drying a hide out before I tan it, I'll start out in the morning with it facing east, and then incrementally face it ultimately towards the west as the sun moves, so it'll dry it out as much as possible. So when I do apply the really warm brain solution, it'll soak it up quicker. But we don't really have the luxury of that right now, and it looks like the next couple days we're probably not. So this is as good as it gets. So we're ready to start putting the brain solution on. Now, as we know, water moves downhill, so we're going to start right here, down the middle of the hide, and then work out. The consistency of hair on is more like a thick oatmeal to me. The consistency of buckskin is more of a soup. Brains, nonetheless, I just use a little bit less water when I'm doing hair on tanning. Whenever the chickens and guinea hens smell this, they know it's lunchtime. So, put a little bit of brains on. I'm going to let it cool off for a sec. You see the steam coming off, don't burn my hands. Yeah, it's still pretty hot. I'm going to work down the middle first. As it cools off so it's just tolerable, I'm going to rub a little bit. I want to massage this brain solution into the collagen fiber network, which, if you remember, is pretty much the skin. I'm going to rub that in. I'm going to start up top all the way to the edge of the hide. I want to rub the side of the hide because it's got to soak in there too. I want to get a little bit of liquid and put it on the holes that I punched for the lacing twine or the mason twine. I want to make sure and soak a little bit of the twine up so it'll soak through and through for the holes, because the holes are a little bit tighter, or bunched up a little bit tighter. It's a little bit harder for that solution to absorb in there. Now, I think this part is pretty important. I want to make sure and get copious amounts of brain solution down into the capsules where the claws are, where the toe bones, claw bones are. Now, you do want to be very, very liberal with your brain application, but you don't want to waste it. You want to try to keep as much of your brain solution on your hide as possible, not on the ground. It's not bad for it, but the chickens and guinea hens will help me finish off what's left over. Nice and thick around the pads and around the holes where the claws are. The warm brains will absorb a little bit quicker than cold brains, in my opinion. Warm helps expand the hide just enough to help the absorption. Dry is better, a little bit drier than we have today, but I think warm is pretty important for this too. On a real cold day, it's also nice if it's warm for your hands. So what's happening right now, as I'm massaging the brain solution in, is this oatmeal consistency solution is starting to absorb into the collagen fiber network. And if I've done everything correctly and mindfully up to this point, it will soak in up to the hair on the hair side, tanning the hide out. The lecithin, that phospholipid, is what's going to tan the hide out. If bears in particular, I did not take enough of the fat off, the grease off, it won't tan all the way through. That will make essentially an impermeable membrane that will not allow the absorption of the brains. So what basically is happening is the lecithin, is mummifying the hide, slowing the decomposition process down, which is what brain tanning essentially is. Now, you do want enough brain solution to cover the surface area of your animal, and I don't think there is an equation that's exact with this. Deer is a little bit easier, usually somewhere in the ballpark of 1 pound of brains for a medium sized buck, or decent sized doe, not exact. 2 pounds for a medium to big buck, exceptionally big doe. I would rather err on the side of caution and go more than less. And the old adage, and I know this may sound sideways with some people, every animal has enough brains to tan its own hide. I absolutely disagree with that, especially if you're going to go back and rebrain your hides. Now the head, as I said before, is a little different because it's not flat. So you really want to heavy up on the brain solution on the head. Every square inch of surface area that's flesh or that you fleshed out needs to get a very, very, very thick coat of brains. Everywhere. There isn't one place that's any more or less important. Some places are just more challenging. Really heavy up on this. Everywhere I can get to, making sure that I coat everything. Now I know I'm in good shape now because I'm pulling on the hair and it's not slipping, it's sticking, which is a good sign. And when you pull on your hair, don't pull on the tiny little hairs like around the eyes, because they'll come out easier just because they're not very big. Pull on thicker pieces of hair, and especially around the circumference of the hide, it's nice and thick. So we are definitely starting off quite well. All right, so I have more brain solution, so I'm going to use it. I'm going to get a little bit more on the chin. That's not thick enough. Because I do not want this hide to lay on the ground. That's another way to keep the hide slipping because it will not dry out. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to put concrete block up under each corner. Got a couple more things we're going to do before we're done for today. Now, I don't want the head laying on the ground if I can help it. Oops, what I'm going to do, you can use another cinder block or something to raise it up just a bit, make it relatively flush. A little bit downhill. And here, I'm going to grab my original lacing tie. Sure this is going to work. And we'll run through the nose. Whoops, we're going to go the other way. So it starts to dry out evenly. I definitely do not want this big boy to be laying on the ground like that. All the cartilage and everything is off the nose. Okay. I'm going to pick the ears up so they get a little air circulation as well. If you have the resources and find, like say right now, I started doing this and it started raining, like proper raining, and you have a garage, take your hide inside, put it in the garage. Keep the same basic temperature. 45 degrees is great. 45 to 55 is optimum. You can even put a dehydrator inside a closed building. Will help suck the moisture out of the air. We'll dry the hide out even quicker. We'll tan it out quicker. But because we don't have that luxury and all the spaces that we have other hides in them drying out right now, or bow staves and things like that, this is a good place. So we're pretty much done for today. We'll come back tomorrow. Either way, see what the weather's doing and see where we're at.